we'll be talking on one of the major natural disasters that we know about called flooding. So, what is flooding? Flooding is basically defined as the overflow of water into a land that is usually dry. So, when water overflows from um, a water body, or when there is excess water in a place that is usually dry, that is what we call flooding, or that is basically the definition of flooding. So, facts about flooding. The first fact here is that floods are the most frequent type of natural disaster and occur when an overflow of water submerge land that is usually dry. This is almost likened to the first definition of flooding that I mentioned earlier. And then floods affected more than 2 billion people worldwide between 1998 to 2017. China and India experienced the highest number of absolute flood events and have the largest populations exposed to floods. Um, Another fact is between 80 to 90% of all documented disasters from natural disasters during during the sorry my screen is during the past 10 years have resulted from floods, droughts, tropical cyclones, heat waves, and severe storms. And floods are increasingly increasing in frequency and intensity, and the frequency and intensity of extreme precipitation is expected to continue to increase due to climate change. So from this fact, you can see that flood, no matter how small or common it is realized as one of the most dangerous type of natural disaster that occurs in the nation or in the world today. So we'll be looking at the causes of flooding, and one of the major causes of flooding, like I've put here, is deforestation. Now, for those of you who do not know what deforestation is, it is basically the cutting down of trees, the mass cutting down or mass destruction of trees. You see it when maybe in government, in nations where government wants to build with properties or new land areas, and then they cut down the trees. But we forget or we fail to realize that these trees help store carbon dioxide, and an excess of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere can be one of the instigators of severe climate changes, which could later on lead to heavy rainfall and cause flooding in a society or in the nation or in the world. So deforestation is one of the major causes of flooding. Another cause is poor or blocked drainage system. Now, everywhere, in every place you go to, you will see a drainage system and all. And when these drainage systems end up being blocked, there is no passageway for water that is on land, on dry land, to actually drain back into the sea or the ocean or to any of the nearest water body close to that nation or close to that city. So one of the and another cause of flooding is poor or blocked drainage system. We also have heavy rainfall as one of the major causes of flooding, because when rain falls heavily due to probably climate changes, it causes water to accumulate on dry land, and if there is no good drainage system, we see that it ends up causing stagnant water in that land and can cause a lot of serious diseases, can cause harm to people's properties, and so many other things. So heavy rainfall is also another cause of flooding. And the final cause that I'll be saying here is climate change. Now, climate changes, we can see that um, over the years, like the picture I used, you can see that there was a depreciation of this land mass from the first year. If you look at the 1981 year, you would see that the amount of water that was gathered at a particular place was just really small. But because of climate change, increasing rainfall and um, the breaking down of the land and body mass, the water increases in the year 1998, and by 2009 you can see that the land is looking totally different from what it used to be. So climate change is also another factor that affects that causes flooding in a society. So types of flooding. Um, I picked these three major types because I feel these are the ones that we as people can totally relate to, and the three of them are flash floods, river floods, and coastal floods. I will be explaining them more in details, but these are the three major types of flooding. There are other types, but I picked these three because these are the most commons that occur in the world today. So, flash floods, they are caused by rapid and excessive rainfall that raises water heights quickly, and river stream channels or roads may be overtaken. So, I'm a Nigerian, and I have experienced flash floods a lot of times because of the heavy rainfall that happens in our society, where you see rain fall for a really really long time, and then the gutters get filled up and sometimes overflow into the roads, and then the roads become so covered with water that people have to walk. Cars are covered up with the excess water that is being held in the roadside, and these are caused by flash flood. So flash flood is basically when it's basically caused by heavy rainfall. When heavy rainfall falls into dry land, and instead of the water finding a way to flow out, it stays in the dry land and then builds up, which later causes roads and stream channels to be overtaken. So that is what flash floods are. So the next one, coast river floods. Let me go to river floods first. So river floods, they said they are caused when consistent rain or snow melt forces a river to exceed capacity. Now, if you look at it, flash floods and river floods are kind of the same, but there is a difference, which is what I'll explain. So for the flash floods, we see that it is caused when heavy rainfall falls on the dry land, right? And then it fills up like gutters, drainage systems, and even covers the roadside. But for river floods, it's slightly different. So what happens is the rainfall falls on a river body or a water body, right? Which causes that water body to exceed the capacity that it is meant to be, and then it overflows into the dry land. So that's the difference. For flash floods, you can see that the rain falls on the dry land, and then it fills up the gutters, fills up the roadsides and everything, probably because of poor drainage system, and the water just remains on the dry land without leaving. But for river floods, it has more to do with water bodies around the land. So if there was a river close to that land and then rain falls and causes the level of the river to overflow, that overflows to the dry land, and that is what we call a river flood. So that is the difference between the flash flood and river flood. And the final one is the coastal flood. These floods are caused by storm surges associated with cyclones and tsunamis. If you look at the this diagram I put in there, you would see the place where the road storm surge and strong wind. So when we see, luckily in places like Nigeria, we do not really experience tsunamis or cyclones, but there are other parts of the world, like in Asia, most of those places that really experience floods, like we saw earlier in the facts about India and China experiencing more flooding. So coastal floods are mostly caused because of storm surges associated with cyclones and tsunamis. So when these happen, they cause the water or the river body to move onto the dry land forcefully. They move onto the dry land and thereby overflow over the dry land and cause flooding, right? So those are the types of flood. We mentioned flash floods, river floods, and coastal floods. So we move on to the effects of flooding. One of the effects I have listed here is the loss of lives. Now, a lot of you may not understand what that means, but truly, flooding can cause loss of lives. I will give an example. Back in my country, Nigeria, I had a friend who one day fell into a gutter, and that gutter was almost as tall as he was. Now, lucky for him, that gutter was empty. But imagine if that gutter was filled with water that had overflown and probably covered the whole of the gutter, and someone were to fall into it. We do not know what could have been contained in the water. A person may misstep and even hit something hard that could eventually cause a very dire injury and lead to possible death. So yes, flooding can actually cause loss of lives. Another effect of flooding is the destruction of homes and properties. um, like it or not, water carries a lot of power, and when flooding occur, especially when there's accumulation of stagnant water in a house, it can cause destruction of properties like documents. Even the foundation of the house can get soaked up, and it can end up destroying these homes and properties. It can also cause damage to roads, schools, and bridges. It damages roads and then causes things we call potholes when there is stagnant water in the roadside, and schools and bridges can also be damaged just by the effect of flooding. Um, Another effect of flooding is the displacement of families. Like it or not, when homes and properties are destroyed, the family will have no other choice but to move out from where they were living. And that can be very dire for people when they have to leave the place they call home to settle somewhere else that they may not even know. So flooding can be this dangerous. It can cause displacement of families. It causes the spread of diseases as well through contaminated water. I am very sure that a lot of you have heard of cholera, which is one of the most common diseases spread through contaminated water. Now, cholera can be very dangerous, and it is only caused when there is stagnant contaminated water around. And in a case where there is flooding, imagine how much of evil bacteria can brood in these stagnant waters, in these contaminated waters, and cause damage to the lives of people. When especially when people are not educated on these disease conditions like cholera and the effects of contaminated water, these things can spread diseases which can eventually lead to the loss of lives of people. Another effect of flooding is the loss of crops and livestock. This is almost similar to the destruction of homes and properties when um, the floods can end up drowning animals because not all animals know how to swim, and it causes destruction of those livestock and then crops as well. There are some crops that are not able to withstand floods. Crops like maize, crops like cassava. When there is stagnant water around the areas where these things are breeding, it can shrink the growth of these crops and eventually lead to the destruction. It can introduce bacteria that are so dangerous that will end up eating these crops, and these crops end up dying. And then the final effect of flooding here is economic hardship for the communities. Now, this is where the money that is supposed to be spent on building the economic of the society is now spent trying to probably fix a flooding issue, trying to help settle people's families in the community. So the money, the economy of those people end up depreciating because of flooding. This is how dangerous flooding can be. So now we'll move to how we can reduce flooding. So how can we reduce flooding? Um, so I split this into two groups. The reason why I did this is because, like it or not, as individuals, we have our role to play when it comes to flooding, when it comes to prevention of flooding. And as a community, we also have a role to play. So I have listed here some of our roles or the ways we can help reduce flooding as individuals and the ways we can reduce flooding as a community. So, as individuals, disposing of waste properly. Oh, this is a very good one because um, we see that, especially, um, there are people who do not know how to dispose waste properly, and so you see there is waste on the roadside, on the drainage system, and these things eventually lead to the one of those causes that I mentioned, causes of flooding, poor or blocked drainage system. So we need to educate the community about disposing of waste properly. We need to learn as individuals ourselves to learn to dispose waste properly because only then can we help prevent some of these causes of flooding, which like I said is blockage of drainage system. Another you would pass a drainage system and you see that, or maybe there are some dirt that are hanging around there. As individuals, we can do something. We can help clear those drainage channels so that it doesn't end up causing a blockage, which may now eventually lead to flooding. Okay, so another way we can do this is by participating in community sanitation exercises. I remember when I was young, when I think it's every third Saturday of the month. I can't recall anymore, but in our nation then there was environmental sanitation where the people go out and they go ahead to pick things, um, keep the roads clean, keep their houses clean, dispose waste properly from their places and all that. And I feel like if we individuals learn to adhere to these community sanitation exercises, we can help reduce things that cause flooding. Okay. Um, yeah, I also wrote planting more trees. Now, I put this in individual aspect, but it should also be in the community aspect because, like I said, deforestation mostly is removal of trees, especially in the forest, right? And the more trees we have, the more we are able to preserve nature, the more we'll be able to reduce the release of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, which could eventually cause climate change that would lead to flooding. Okay, because like it or not, if we keep destroying trees, we keep exposing the land to erosions, we keep exposing the land to disintegration, and these can lead to climate changes that causes flooding. Okay, another way we can help reduce flood is by avoiding construction on waterways. This is a very good one. This is a very good one because when you construct structures on waterways, pathways that water was meant to flow out of the community, you would see that it causes a blockage, and causes stagnation of water. These are the things that could literally cause stagnation of water, like when water becomes stagnant in a particular area. It's almost like the way a dam works. You know, when people build dams, the dams get to the water gets to a point where it flows and almost overflows the dam. So when you construct um, properties or do constructions on waterways, it has a tendency of raising the water level. And when it raises the water level, in cases of heavy rainfall, it will be very easy for those water bodies to overflow into the normal dry land, and it will be bad for us. Then finally, as individuals, we should learn to report blocked drains to local authorities. Yes, we have that role to play. We can report it because not all the time do local authorities know what is going on in our communities. But if as individuals and as a community we are able to report to local authorities when we notice these things, then we'll be able to help reduce flooding. So as community, I wrote organize in regular environmental sanitation, educating residents about floods. Now, I will speak more on this because I think PSL as a company, we are also trying our best to help teach people more on proper waste disposal because like it or not, if people are well educated, um, we can we can give people more reasons to understand why it is essential to dispose waste properly to prevent flood. Because as flooding continues, amongst the facts, we said that the frequency and intensity of floods increases, will continue to increase every year. So if we are unable to do or start acting on the processes of reducing flooding, there is tendency that these floods will increase with frequency and intensity and cause more economic breakdown in the future years to come. This is not a prophecy, this is fact. Okay, encourage proper waste management disposal, work together with local authorities, and promote environmental responsibility among young people. There is a need for young people to be involved in all of these things because they are strong, they are powerful, they can do a lot for the community. Okay, um, so the benefits of flood prevention. I was trying to make an acronym here, but unfortunately, there was no way I could make. Oh wow, yeah, I don't think I could have made an acronym. Anyways, so for the benefits of flood prevention, I have written here it saves lives. Yes, it saves lives when floods are able to be prevented, people's lives can be safe. It is risky when people have to cross through stagnant road water to get to their homes because nobody knows what could be going on underneath the water. Nobody knows what they may be stepping on, and this thing can end up becoming very dangerous to people. So if we are able to prevent flooding, we are able to save lives, to preserve more lives. Then I wrote protect, to protect homes and businesses. Yes, yes, businesses have been affected by floods. Floods have caused yes, if we are able to prevent flood, we'll be able to protect homes and businesses. Another way, a benefit of prevention of flood is improving public health. Yeah, so like I mentioned earlier, that one of the effects of flooding is spread of disease through contaminated water, right? Education of people about floods, about contaminated water, about proper waste disposal to the extent that they will be able to take care of themselves. They will be able to learn simple things like hand washing, about water purification, and these things can help improve the health of the public in general. Then another benefit here is preserve the environment. Yes, it helps preserve the environment. Like you can see, when I talked about climate change, when floods, when the water remained in a particular place for a long time, it caused a degradation of that area, that the flood started accumulating until that place just became something else entirely. So yes, it helps preserve the environment when you learn proper flood prevention method like deforestation. If we are able to plant more forests, more trees, we'll be able to preserve the soil. Studies show that the more trees we have, the more they are able to hold the soil together. So somehow, with the more there are trees, the more the soil is solid than if there are less trees. Okay, so yes, it can help preserve the environment when we learn proper flood prevention, and then it supports sustainable community development. Another 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 benefit is that it reduces economic losses. Yes, it reduces economic losses. Money that the government would have been using to do or build infrastructure, take care of their society. If floods happen, they may now have to use this money to help work on the floods. So when we are able to work and prevent floods individually as a community and as a nation, it will help reduce economic losses of that community, right? Um, so yes, I think we've come to the end. Um, Flooding is a serious natural disaster, but together we can reduce its impact by keeping our environment clean, protecting drainage system, planting trees, and practicing responsible waste disposal. We can build safer and healthier communities for everyone. A cleaner environment today means a safer community tomorrow. Join us, PSL, as we also go ahead in encouraging um, flooding prevention by encouraging by educating the property on proper drainage system and responsible waste disposal. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening. And if you have any questions, please you can drop your questions, and we will be here to answer them. Thank you.